The mob, the group, is far more dangerous than the individual due to the accumulation of vicious crimes. As a mob, they justify each other. Scary as hell. Mobism. Well, the group is just like that, maybe to a lesser degree. Let's take scapegoatism or extreme prejudice, how that bonds a mob against one person or a group. Let's take a look at that. People reflect their group, and all groups are different. That's the reason for relocation. All groups are different. You may be well accepted in one group and hated in another. Or you may have the whole town against you in one small town in a group and relocate and everybody loves you. Every group is different, but people reflect their group. Except for the individuated person who's just himself. He transcends all group or generation or eras or genders or whatever. He's just of the whole world, of all history. He doesn't reflect that particular group of people. Let's look at it bioethnologically. It's called the microscopic social dance. A group of researchers took videos of people when they were interacting from the same culture or family, and they slowed it way down and enlarged each frame, put it on the wall. And from every level, from eye blinks to posture, they were in a perfect synchrony, what is called a microscopic dance. And that is the ethological definition of culture or family. People who they've adapted to each other and they're sort of in a dance if you were to slow it down. And people who don't fit that brings novelty in the brain and they don't like them. They don't know why, they just don't like them. People had a bad childhood where they really weren't liked by their own family because they were different. They may have been an empath or a very sensitive person. Instability results, not being loved, not fitting the group. We all want to fit the group until later, until we're individuated, until we see through it. But as a young child, we want to fit. And if we're a misfit and the others are reacting against us, we become unstable. It's hard to adapt, and we're probably going to maladapt. Adults may maladapt to that feeling of misfitting by drinking or falling into their bag. That's where we get obstruction number 2, habit or addictions. Obstruction number 1 is people, number 2 is habit, number 3 is food. And so, that instability may follow them through life, no matter how rich they become, how well educated, whatever. That feeling of misfitting until they can see through the tyranny of the group. That's where my job comes in, to explain how this happens in human nature. See through the group. See how people react. You might get married, you enter a new family, and how come they all mistreat you? Well, you're different from them. The group dynamics will go against the newcomer. And you have things like the stepmother syndrome, where the children don't accept her. The mother-in-law doesn't accept her. The mother-in-law comes in her house and bosses her around and tries to make her feel guilty because she's not doing this or not doing that. Groupism. It's really hard to adapt to groups. Now, if you're a social person, you have these social skills, these skill sets of adapting. You may be very popular. It's not a mark of intelligence. It's just a mark that you're very social and that you don't experience these things that a misfit experiences. And due to his hypersensitivity, he picks up on it much more than you do, whereas you may be blind to it. It's become your mundanity. In the lives of great people, they start out that way, and the road may be very rough to greatness. because you're going against the grain. And it may be a situation of a disaster happening, and then they recover, okay? Recovery. A disaster, then recovery. A disaster, then recovery. Like this, all the way. And they get stronger and stronger and stronger, as long as they don't fall into their bag and regress back through drinking and addictions, which many geniuses fall into addiction. How many great writers and painters have you read about that weren't alcoholic? You know, they were trying to, get some solace in this cruel world. But it's disaster, recovery, disaster, recovery. The road to greatness is rough. It's a rough ride. And then finally, you're stable. You're rich and famous. You've individuated out of the herd. You're now yourself. You've returned to who you were when you were born. Not your second nature, your false personality you took on in order to adapt. You've now divorced from that. You've come back to your true talents, the seed symbol at birth, as prefigured, before your birth by God. And now your talents come out, and nobody's holding you back anymore. And you don't care if they're judging you, because you can see how inferior they are. This is a manual for the superior man who wants to transcend groupism and find his own talents and be rewarded for them. Indeed, this is what I wrote in my journal when I was going through this. I felt severely misjudged by everybody. They didn't know me. They were listening to other people. They had no idea who I was. But I was different from them. And different means guilty in the herd's eye. That's just human nature, okay? Judged by the people around you. Dismissed by those closest. The terror of being seen as too much. The humiliation of knowing people have agreed on a reality in which your view no longer matters. Doesn't matter what you say at a certain point. You can justify yourself with science, with anything, and they won't care, because the agreed upon reality is more important than the truth. That is the herd. I was reading the biography of Vivian Leigh and other very powerful female actresses. They had rare gifts, they were beautiful, and they were ruined by the world or by their husbands. Female collapse, dismissal and removal, women destroyed by the brutality and intolerance of others, how easily a sensitive, vulnerable woman becomes intolerable to them. Some women are too fragile for their gifts. You gotta be strong if you're gonna be different. And if you're not gonna be your unique self, you gotta adapt to them and conform. And that'll make you crazy and age before your time. Premature aging will set in. Why do people look that way as they age? Because they've conformed and it went against their will. Or a woman was married to 30, 40 years, loved her husband very much, but he died. And now she starts to find out, I'm free. I can have the house a little warmer than she takes back what she wants because she gave it all up for him. I can have my breakfast at 10 rather than 6, and I can, do this and that. And she feels so free because she was literally erased from adapting to somebody else. A lot of marriages are wonderful. That doesn't happen, but I've been reading about that. Where women are simply erased. And freedom is wonderful, okay? Some women are too fragile for their gifts. If you're not going to conform like that, and you're going to instead become your true self, you got to be strong, unless you're going to be a hermit like me and not have to fight it. But I did fight it for decades, living in a small town, living in a family that didn't accept me, and just rumors started, and they saw me in a certain way, which was very bad. They didn't understand anything about me or what I had studied. All they saw was their projection. Bad, bad, bad. You see? And it could be that they were German. I don't know. Every culture is different the way they perceive things. Everything about a person is different depending on the culture or group they're part of. And some people will think bad sooner. Their threshold limits of difference is narrower, okay? Some are more accepting, some aren't. But I was judged in a certain way by the opinion leaders of the family, my two older sisters. Everybody else believed them. Then that extended to the extended family. Everybody else believed them. The infants were brought up a certain perception of me and whatever. I had to move out. That is groupism. That's how the perceptual apparatus works. It's called scapegoatism, how groups perceive things. It is the reason for prejudice, okay? It can be prejudice against groups, prejudice against one person. It's all the same thing. I had to adapt or maladapt to this situation, trying to get along. You're stuck in a group, you have to get along. You can't just go in your room and lock your door and sulk, you know? And so, you know, it's a kind of existence where it's not quite living and not quite dying. You can't explain yourself, they won't believe you anyway. You're trying to stamp out fires. The fires are always being started by people. You know, people want to hate. People project out, they want to find somebody to blame for their inadequacies. That is why scapegoatism always exists. It's human nature to project it out. And once you get somebody pegged, then you have an investment in it. You don't want to change your perception. In dysfunctional families, they have a scapegoat, and they, no matter what the truth is, they will stick to that whole, interpretation, that narrative, only until overwhelming evidence that that person is different has changed. Will they ever change? People tend to just, like concrete, stick to a certain viewpoint. And that is the situation. That's why relocation is so important. All my neighbors love me now. I mean, I can't even get used to it because I lived in a small town where it was just the opposite. Every group is different. It's all based on fear. Fear of anything different always ends in persecution. Think of that, all right? Then darker or more dangerous rumors begin to circulate. They're afraid, they persecute, they peg you, and then it gets darker and darker because people get together and they elaborate on it and they make up lies because that feeling of blaming something else is so powerful with people, okay? The fear of difference combined with power, an opinion leader, an alpha female, judging the odd girl out, whatever, will always end in persecution as darker and more dangerous visions begin to circulate. Human beings in their systems, they are mean. You know, like dogs when they get into groups can be very dangerous. A dog can be very nice, but when he gets involved with a group of dogs, watch out. They will kill. Let's talk about those opinion leaders, those alpha females, the queen bee of a group, jealous of a new girl on the block. She's prettier than you, and she will create hell for that girl, okay? Targeting the odd girl out, the girl that doesn't fit, the girl that won't conform, the girl that has her own talents, her own life, her own worldview, doesn't want to go along with the others. She's the one that will be targeted, and it's the alpha female that does it. Boy, I have known a few queen bees, all right? But they always end up destroyed. You know, like my mother always said, things always even out in the end, Karen. And you know what? It doesn't matter that there is no proof. There is no evidence, okay? The herd mechanism has been tripped off and gains a power all its own. They won't believe anything but what the herd. It's like a flock of birds. Flying in perfect unison to each other, nobody ever questions the flight pattern in general. They're just adapting to each other. People are the same way, okay? Truth doesn't matter. No evidence doesn't matter. That's what makes this so scary. Okay, there was no way I could talk anybody out of anything in a small town, and I could just see they wanted to think what they did. Nobody wanted to see it in a new light. Truth no longer matters. Only fear does. It's human nature to project out blame and find an enemy. We got to find that enemy. They get bored. They need war. Human nature. They're like dogs. We'll call the video The Psychology of Blame. Human ethology. Looking at humans in their systems. Don't study a human in the laboratory. Try to figure out what's going on with him, what's wrong with him. You know, abnormal psychology, as traditional psychology does. But become a human ethologist. How he acts in his system. How he acts around other people, in his network. How has he maladapted to his family system? Or what has happened to him as he tries to disentangle himself from that system and become his true self? How did the others react? And what did he do? You know, is that when he started drinking? Why is it that in mental hospitals, on guest days when the family comes, that's when the patient starts to act out? Okay, he's a wholly different person when they're not there, but on family day he goes crazy. People in their systems. Human ethology, systems theory. Start to look at that. And in your own situation, write a therapeutic play. Therapeutic playwriting, just 4 acts of everything that happens. And even though the details may change, the patterns are the same. And you'll see total redundancy. And I think that is the best therapy. Come on.